Like many of us, I have been in some form of therapy or another for at least a couple of decades. Some therapists and some modalities have been more helpful for my particular brain weasels than others, but over the years, I have begun to struggle to find a practitioner who is both affordable and in any way actually helpful. My personal history is a big tangle of stubborn persistence and trauma and re-trauma and adaptive coping mechanisms and maladaptive coping mechanisms and self-analysis and agony and acceptance and survival. A lot of my therapists have struggled to figure out where to begin without making that tangle even more snarled. I've also had to come to accept that at this point in my life, talking about my past and present emotions doesn't really help me. Feeling them, on the other hand. And it was this very conundrum which recently led me to seek a few sessions with a somatic practitioner. I am definitely someone whose past experiences are inscribed within the tissues of my body, so the compassionate guidance of this practitioner launched me forward in my healing journey almost immediately. And the biggest shift happened during our third meeting time. She asked me if there was some part of my body that was asking for attention. And I noticed that my neck was bothering me. So we started focusing on that area together. And all of a sudden, I realized that I had been in a quiet flashback. And whether my janky spine had set off the flashback or the flashback itself had been worsening the pain and tension that was there, either way, there inside the back of my neck was the year 2009. My body was talking to me about how I barely slept that year. Having been a passenger in two minor car accidents, I had untreated whiplash, which progressed into jaw problems, and I spent every night rolling around like a rotisserie chicken in my bed, trying fruitlessly to find a sleeping position that didn't hurt too much. Because I was in my body at the time of this session, and not just recalling the incident cerebrally, the year 2009 continued unfolding in my emotions and my memories and my body. All the other soul-crushing events of that year, my 19-year-old youthful confusion and overwhelm, my dreams and the sacrifices that I made in the attempt to pursue them. Now, the therapeutic miracle continued as then 2010 began to emerge from my neck and shoulders, and then 2011 and 2012. And in the space of a few minutes, 2009 me was freed from exile and united with the rest of me. My memories of that year, the ones which had been attempting to form pressure diamonds between my neck vertebrae, became unfrozen in time and returned to their place in the story. That one particular lump of trauma became smooth. I came away from this somatic session with a new understanding of the ways that trauma impacts our lives. Yes, I know we talk a lot about trauma in our communities these days, but unfortunately, it hasn't stopped being relevant. So I'm going to keep talking about it. Our lives are ruled by the human construct known as time. From our perspective, it only flows in one direction, past to future. We can't go back and change history, nor can we jump ahead. We are resigned to live our lives in order, one second after the next. The ways that time and memory play together, however, are less straightforward than that. Neuroscience has suggested that recalling a particular memory is less like looking at a photograph and then putting it back in the album, and more like retelling a campfire story. Every time we call up a particular memory, we recreate it before it gets refiled. Sometimes these recreations are imperfect. Sometimes they cause our nervous systems to react as though the remembered moment is happening in the present. Now, a disclaimer. I am not a scientist. I am an introspective human. The observations I'm about to offer are experiential and not, as far as I'm aware, scientifically backed. I have no desire to add to the rampant culture of disinformation and pseudopsychology which is plaguing this country. These claims are experiential, relational, and story-based. Don't drink raw milk, Get vaccinated. Gaslighting is not a synonym for lying. And the idea I'm about to share with you is a conceptual observation unrelated to neuroscience. What I've come to understand is that trauma prevents our memories from taking their proper place in the overall flow of our life story. It creates little disruptions, frozen moments sticking up jaggedly out of the river of time, or unsewn pages poking out of the cover of the book. In the undisturbed consciousness, our sense of self and our sense of our life story are smooth and cohesive. For my fractured nervous system, there are big disconnects between the person I was as a child, as a teen, as a young adult, and today. Every once in a while, when the circumstances are just right, we have the opportunity to melt a frozen moment and let it sink back into the life story flow. The days, weeks, months, and years surrounding the pain point are restored to the same general amplitude as that moment itself. It doesn't necessarily stop hurting, but it can stop disrupting the spirit. The feeling of releasing those stuck spots feels like a muscle spasm, finally letting go. And all of this is well and good when it's about the wounds of the past, but it does feel a little different in 2025, when sometimes it seems like the world is designing itself to drown us in trauma. I'm not going to list anything here. You know what I'm talking about. So let's just be quiet for a moment so you can fill in the blank with your own sources of misery. I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to imagine a time when I'll be able to look back on these ghastly days with enough peace of mind to unite them with an undisrupted life story. And I am haunted by fear that the suffering is just beginning. Time feels cruel in some ways, but a creative relationship with our understanding of time can also be a big source of redemption. In the dazed days immediately following the 2016 election, my now spouse and I shared an overwhelming sense of doom. Despair was never far away from us. It felt like our lives were about to be over, when in many ways they had only just begun. Not too long after, we attended a concert together, which happened to be at Sanctuary Location, First Parish, Cambridge. A solo cellist with a looping station, whose career we both happened to appreciate. As the sustained low strings, the chirps and thumps and melodies began to fill that huge sanctuary, I felt the world outside retreat, and my eyes begin to fill with complicated tears. Next to me, my partner was gripping my hand. When we left the concert, my partner turned to me and said, I had a revelation in there. It came to me that no matter what else happens to us, this moment will always have existed, and this music will always have been played. Time is useful for measuring many types of things. We actually originally created the Western system of timekeeping in order to facilitate train travel. It helps us divide our days, meet our friends for lunch, notice when it's time to go to sleep, and make sense of our memories. What time can't actually measure, no matter how hard we try to do so, is worth or value. The brevity of a moment does not serve as a source of comparison to other moments. A trauma that occurred in a matter of microseconds is no more or less disruptive by nature than one that occurred over the course of years. And a joy that lasts for the blink of a firefly is no more or less important than a joy which accompanies a full week of community singing. Since 2016, I have been adjacent to the completion of many life stories. The longest life I have honored at its end, it was 103 years, and the shortest was 5 days. The impact that each of those lives has had on the world was not measured by the life's duration, and the love they inspired was infinite and impossible to curtail. In 2025, The little stones that I am hopping on to cross the raging waters are these. I don't have to be okay every day. I don't have to ward off or deny the sources of misery, which are all around. What I need is simply to allow myself to be fully present and available for wonder and gratitude when there is goodness in that moment. When love or music or art or my animals or nature or good food or an invitation to playfulness arrives, to remember that this is enough. This will always have happened. And to perch there in that moment until someday the world offers enough peace that I can look back on these times and weave them all softly into my self-knowledge and allow the story to smooth into an undisrupted flow once more. My closing charge to us today is love, music, art, animal companions, nature, good food, an invitation to playfulness. Whatever moment we find to perch on, let us remember that this is enough. This will always have happened. Someday, this will flow along with the great story which is beyond each of us and all of us. For just a few more breaths, let us all be fully here.